For years, the US and Iran have been locked in this really tense standoff. But now it feels like everything is coming to a head. Right now, behind closed doors, there's a super high stakes negotiation happening that could go one of two ways: either a historic peace or a truly devastating war.
So that really brings us to the big question, right? Are we looking at a real diplomatic breakthrough here, or is this basically the last stop on the road to an all out conflict? I mean, the stakes just could not be higher.
Okay, so here's the latest development that's got everyone talking. Iran is signaling that it might be ready to compromise on its controversial nuclear program. But, and believe me, this is a huge but, their offer has a major catch. And this catch, well, it gets right to the very heart of this entire standoff.
So, to really get what's going on, we've got to break it down. We need to look at exactly what Tehran is putting on the table, and maybe even more importantly, what they consider an absolute non-negotiable red line. All right, the centerpiece of this whole thing is Iran's stockpile of what's called 60% enriched uranium. Now, to put that in perspective for you, that purity level, it's just a tiny step away from what you'd need for a nuclear weapon. Of course, Iran insists its program is totally peaceful, but you can imagine that stockpile has the world on high alert. So this is the core of Iran's position. On the one hand, they're offering a pretty significant compromise. They're saying they'll dilute their stockpile of that highly enriched uranium, which would make it much less of a direct threat. But here's their red line. They absolutely refuse to stop enrichment on their own soil. For them, it's a matter of sovereign right, a point of national pride and technological independence that they're just not willing to give up. And Iran is making sure this message gets heard loud and clear in Washington. Their deputy foreign minister basically came out and said, the ball is in America's court. So from where they're standing, a deal can happen, but it all hinges on one thing. The U.S. needs to show it's serious by lifting those crippling economic sanctions. Okay, so Iran has put its offer out there. How is the United States responding? Well, Washington is playing a pretty complex game here, using a mix of both pressure and diplomacy. It's really a classic carrot and stick strategy. The carrot, that's the offer of a fair deal reached through diplomacy. But the stick, well, the stick has a few parts. They're maintaining those crippling economic sanctions, they're making it clear that military options are still on the table, and they're even beefing up their military presence in the region. It's all about adding leverage. And President Trump himself put it very bluntly. This quote, it leaves absolutely no doubt about how serious the U.S. position is. He's saying, look, we want to make a deal, but if we don't, the alternative will be, in his exact words, very traumatic for Iran. It's about as direct a warning as you can get. So you might